really started diving into strength training my late teens, just a few years into training when I had been doing a bunch of generic bodybuilding style work. Once I realized that I could just glue myself to a barbell, practice getting really good at those movements, and then watch myself get bigger and stronger in front of my own eyes, I was absolutely sold. At that point, all I wanted to do was experiment with different movements, see how I could use them to accommodate my specific build, to solve particular problems. I wanted to know which ones the pros use most often to solve problems that they ran into and to keep themselves growing. It seemed that no matter what movement I selected, as long as it met a few specific criteria, that I could reliably incorporate it into my program and continue to see progress. Given that the squat, bench, and deadlift are the foundational big three for building a body with limited equipment, with limited variety, that you could just focus on those movements and anybody could get bigger and stronger in a very predictable fashion, I wanted to give you guys my top 10 list of most productive strength movements. Now, some of these are just variations of the big three that maybe you haven't considered in a while. Some of these are different movements altogether that are must-do accessory exercises that you can easily do in conjunction with the big static lifts. So we're gonna go line by line down each one, what they do, what you can expect from it, which problems it can solve, and concerns and considerations that you want to take into account when implementing these into your program. Number one is a pressing movement. We're starting with a pin press. Now, I've made videos about pin presses before, and yes, this applies to benching and overhead pressing. I've had a lot of success with both. I knew a guy, Philip Morris, I've told this story before. He was a legit 675 bencher. This guy walked around like a short Jewish Hulk. He was incredibly strong, and one of the things he cited as being responsible for his immense pressing power was disadvantaging himself by starting his benches from the bottom and doing them off the pins without any stretch reflex. And that as he built starting power, he noticed that with a touch and go, he could just handle insane amounts of weight. So I started experimenting with them. As I went down that rabbit hole, I found that a ton of people implement some variation of pin presses with a ton of success. It seems to be universal. Pausing at the bottom and then coming to a dead stop on each rep and then firing up from a dead stop from the bottom. Having to overcome that inertia is absolutely huge, and most people are not used to it. It's a completely novel stimulus, so you can expect a huge surge in strength really just from that. Probably not going to be as strong going from a dead stop there, but as time goes on, you'll get closer and closer and closer to what your normal pressing strength is. Number two is a push press. Now, you guys all know that this is one of my favorite upper body builders. I love the push press because it's like a built-in slingshot. You get the benefit of the power that you can generate through your legs by getting the bar moving in the most weakest position, and then you can follow through. You can practice punching through explosively and really overload the top end. Because there's a skill component and because the whole upper body and midsection has to support the weight, you really get the opportunity to increase all of these different areas that you really can't with just static pressing. So as you get more skilled, as you get more explosive in your jump, as your timing gets better, you're going to handle more weight. And as you handle more weight, you're going to notice your upper back, your midsection, your hips and legs are going to get better at just supporting the weight, which translates to strength and stability there. The explosive punching movement is very unique to the upper body, and it helps with everything from throwing to throwing a punch, anything with your upper body. I mean, if you're a wrestler, if you're a lineman, anything that requires keeping somebody at arm's length that's going to benefit from this. This is, in my opinion, one of the most functional upper body movements you can do. If you are a bench press specialist, if you don't do a ton of overhead pressing, it's really easy to work in push presses as your kind of staple upper body movement. You don't have to do a lot of other shoulder work if you're doing a couple sets of really hard push presses in the week. And again, it overloads the top end. It's going to keep your shoulders a bit mobile. It's going to tax you in ways you're not really used to. So this is one of my favorite upper body barbell movements. Barbell Apparel just sold out of all of their new Athletic Fit 2.0 jeans in 24 hours, but they're about to drop a restock on May 1st. It's hard to explain just how comfortable these jeans actually are. You can run in them, throw a high kick, or do whatever else you need to stay active throughout the day. They're so comfortable you won't want to take them off. Barbell Apparel tests their clothing on elite athletes, Tier 1 military operators, and hundreds of customers just like you. That's why they back their clothing up with a no questions asked 365-day guarantee. If anything happens to your clothing, they'll help you repair or replace it, so you can get back after whatever training, adventure, or mission that your daily life demands. The all-new 2.0 jeans represent over 10 years of research to make them better than ever. So if you want to grab a pair before they sell out again, join the waitlist by texting barbell to 48281. The next movement we're looking at is a lower body movement, and that's a Zercher squat. Now, I'm a big fan of squatting, period. Any type of squatting you do, as long as the bar's on your back, you're sitting below parallel and standing back up, your lower body's gonna grow, your hips, your midsection, your upper back will get stronger, and you can spam squats into the ground. It's biomechanically a very friendly movement. There's a ton of reasons why squatting is such a good developmental movement, and it carries over to so many things. Now, Zercher squats, many people are aware of, but few people actually do on a regular basis. The one person I can think of is Nick Best, who was known for having a really heavy Zercher squat, routinely doing reps in the mid 600 pound range, and he was known for being one of the best Husafeld stone carriers in the world. He would always dominate people when he had a big stone, 400 pound stone in front of his chest, and he could just carry it for miles. One of the reasons it is such a good strength movement is because it puts you through the same movement as a squat. So you're getting the deep knee bend, you're getting the hip loading. The glutes are going to feel it because of the change in the bar position. But the bar being lower and centered changes the dynamic. So you notice that the hips come into play a lot more. There's kind of a 1-2 punch because the fact of holding it in your arms kind of changes the way your upper body has to support the weight, which is a little harder. But the fact of the weight being lower and closer to your hips actually improves your leverages quite a bit. So you can actually practice rolling your hips forward almost like you're loading a sandbag or a stone, which is hugely useful. It's hugely productive. So I'm a big fan of Zercher squats. A little bit of pain tolerance required, but you get used to it very quickly. And you don't really have to break yourself trying to program it. Just get a couple of hard sets where you start to strain, where your hips start to slow down. You are going to feel that for a few days. Thing number 4 is the front squat. Now, I've talked about front squats at length. This was one of my pet lifts, partly because I'm built pretty well for it, but partly because every pound I put on my front squat made me better at just about everything in strongman. So this is kind of a must do at some point, at some block of your training. I would say just like a Zercher squat, these are a bit more accessible than a Zercher squat. It's a little more specific to your regular squatting. So you're gonna see this pop up more often as a accessory to squatting for powerlifters or for people who don't really have strongman specific goals. But it is a whole body builder. I mean, having to hold the weight on your collarbone, if you've never done front squats or you haven't done them in a long time, just do some light reps, couple sets of 8 to 10, nothing that's gonna kill you, and do it without a belt. And tell me in 2 days if it hurts to laugh or not. You are going to feel not just your abdominals, you're gonna feel where they tie into your ribs. Your ribs will hurt to the touch. Your upper back is gonna be sore. Your arms will be sore from your biceps kind of cramping up to hold the weight in place. Bit of a learning curve with figuring out where to hold the bar. As long as it's on your collarbone, behind your cap, the cap of your delts, you can start with your arms out. Good rule of thumb is you should be able to squat the bar with your arms straight out without it rolling off. If you can maintain that position, then you're set. That is your front squat position. It's better for quad development. Your legs are gonna grow. It's great for hip development because a bar being in front requires your posterior chain to stay so tight to support the weight. Absolutely fantastic movement. Number 5 is the trap bar deadlift. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. Usually guys do the high handles because it allows them to just slap on a ton of weight. It's an elevated pick, but also the handles are in line with your center of mass or in line with your hips. One of the big obstacles of a deadlift is that the bar is a physical obstruction. It runs into your knees. A trap bar deadlift, you don't have to worry about that at all. You push through the ground, and then my advice to everybody is the second that it starts to get clearance off the ground, you roll your hips into it, because the quicker you get your hips in line with the handle, the stronger you are. It's like a standing leg press, so you're going to be able to move a lot more weight a lot more efficiently. Now the benefit of that maneuver of rolling your hips in is that it carries over to just about every hip extension you can do. It can actually teach you to shove your hips through faster on a deadlift. Even a powerlifting regulation deadlift, a lockout that doesn't involve a hitch, rolling your hips through quickly in a really heavy trap bar deadlift can really teach you to just tighten your glutes up and get those hips forward, which is really good. It hits this kind of weird middle ground too, because the extra load can be really taxing on your lower back, but at the same time, it allows you to stay a lot more upright, which that can be a little bit easier on your lower back. I've known guys that have used trap bar deadlifts to get their toe back in the water after a strain, but you can still get some really meaningful work in. So it's a great middle of the road exercise that allows you to get just a ton of weight handled, really expose yourself to that weight and practice that explosive hip maneuver without just absolutely killing your lower back. So I'm a big fan of it for that reason. Number 6, we have deficit stiff leg deadlifts. Now, stiff leg deadlifts are great, but just adding a little bit of a deficit is going to do a couple of things. It's going to force you to bend over way more than you're used to. And this is the benefit of this. Trap bar deadlift is very advantaged. You want to take advantage of that feature. But with a deficit deadlift, a disadvantaged strength movement, you really want to get comfortable in that bent over position, because that's the point that you're going to develop the most. It's your midsection, it's your obliques, your upper back, everything that keeps your spine rigid when you're just flopped all the way over. If you have any weakness in your midsection, it's going to get exposed right there. So you can start very light. So it's kind of a good break from just the sheer beatdown of weight. It takes you through a very long range of motion. It really disadvantages the hamstrings and the glutes as well. So those main movers are going to get a little bit extra love. And this extra range, really disadvantaged movements like this are typically associated with more hypertrophy. That's a main feature of muscle growth, is range of motion. But a stiff leg deadlift allows you to still handle quite a bit of weight. So anytime you pair range of motion with a decent amount of weight, you have just a huge muscle building stimulus. Just everything around your waist is going to be rock solid. Your upper back is going to be able to just stay tight under any amount of weight. And you're going to be firing into the bar at the start and able to pick up and generate so much speed like you never have before. So I'm a big fan of this. And I think generally it's a very taxing movement, but it's an opportunity to get a huge stimulus without so much weight. So I actually think it's a little bit easier as far as CNS fatigue goes. It's something that probably isn't going to require deloads, really walking a tightrope of recovery. Number 7, we're looking at an RDL. Now, what's the difference between an RDL and a stiff-legged deadlift? It's very subtle, but also very important. And RDL has an assumption that you're keeping a very tight posture. Your shoulders are back, everything's locked in, your torso stays completely rigid, and you are doing a pure hip hinge. Also, the knee should stay a little bit bent the whole time. You should really focus on rocking the hips back. If you do it right, it should look like a pure hip hinge. So it's really good for practicing posture, really good for getting all of those muscles in your upper back to get accustomed to staying locked in where they may want to round forward. You force them back, force the shoulders back, you brace tight, and it's a good way to condition that habit. If you push the effort, which a lot of people don't do, a lot of people sandbag this movement, but if you do all those things, you're going to find your ability to stay rigid under weight is just going to be immensely greater. It's going to be stupid. Disadvantaging the hips compared to a regular deadlift. You're not getting in your strongest position. You're actually forcing a stretch in the hamstrings, which is great for muscle growth. The tempo, great for muscle growth, and that's something that you don't usually get with regular deads. For as good as regular deads are, you usually don't see people going through kind of a controlled negative. You don't see people really taking their time and accruing a bunch of time under tension. There's just so many good things about it. I'm a huge fan of RDLs. Number 8 is a strict bent row. I've talked about bent rows at length as well. There's people that claim they can get great upper back development just doing machines and dumbbells, chest support stuff. That's great if you can do that. I'm talking about heavy compound movements that give you a lot of bang for the buck. You can put them in on upper body days to contrast your chest work. It actually makes it a pretty decent deadlift accessory tool, so that it has that lower body component, makes it easy to put in to contrast your pulling. So I really like it for that reason. Now, a lot of people will do different things with the bent rows. Some of it's really great and some of it really isn't so great. I do like Pendlay rows, cheated rows, power rows. They have their place, but everybody's foundational rowing movement should be strict without any sway, forcing yourself to float the weight at the bottom. So bracing, it's great to teach bracing, like right in conjunction with the Romanian deadlift. Put it in your abdominals, squeeze your abs to maintain position. As you're lowering the weight, as you extend, as you pause, and as you reverse direction, you're going to be absolutely amazed at what it does for your abs and your rectors, and you're working your upper back at the same time. And I think there's something really cool about working your upper back while the rest of your posterior has to brace, because that's a bit more true to life with the way that the upper back works. And I think it's going to give it something a little bit extra. But as a developmental movement for a lot of you guys starting out or guys that have been slacking, you don't need to do much. A few hard sets, progress it the way you would any other barbell movement. Number 9, Dips. I absolutely love parallel bar dips. Puts your shoulders through a fantastic range of motion. This is like the squat for your upper body. Dips are just a fantastic all-around movement. It puts your shoulders through such a wide range of motion that they don't get put through on any other movement. And again, range paired with your ability to handle weight because of the position you're in as you come into a dip. It's more of like a decline press. It's a very strong position. They're pretty easy to scale. I mean, when I program them for people, I write it in. It's use it as much band assistance or added weight as needed to work in the rep range. And again, you progress it just like anything else. If you have trouble with dips because of your body weight, most corporate gyms have a counterbalance machine. But even if you don't, it's just super easy to wrap a mini band around the handles. And then as you get comfortable with that assistance, you can eventually peel some away until you're just handling your body weight. So if your dips get better in any serious capacity, you're going to see your upper body start to transform. Your triceps will be thicker, your shoulders will be thicker. It'll be more useful in a lot of situations. And your bench press, most importantly of all, will be much higher. Lastly on this list is the croc row, named after the infamous powerlifter, Croc Lizeski. Matt Croc was a fantastic lifter, an inspiration, and the legacy lives on with the croc row. If you've ever seen those videos of like a 220-pound dumbbell just being clipped off with a ton of body English for 40 plus reps, it looks sloppy, it looks ugly, it looks like everything you're not supposed to do. But the thing about the upper back is it is meant to be used in the context of this very dynamic type of motion. So the fact that you are bent over supporting the weight, just like I said with the bent row, the fact that you're supporting the weight bent over, the abdominals are tense, the obliques are tense, the erectors are tense, but you're fighting to pull as hard as you can. The lats, they do so much to support, but then they also work to move the weight. When you're doing that 1-2 punch, doing both of that at the same time with a lot of weight and a lot of violence, the end result is just a ton of growth. It just has this effect of building a really nasty upper back. This is easily one of those movements that people don't shy away from because technically it's kind of wonky. They shy away from it because croc rows are one of the suckiest things you can do as far as upper back training goes. I strongly recommend using straps on these. Your grip should not be the limiting factor, and don't be a technical stickler. Your goal is to get into the pain cave, to just chip away, just throw yourself into it rep after rep after rep until you can't feel your arm, until you feel like it's detached from your body. I can't think of any exercise that is going to grow an upper back that is strong and thick and filled out faster. Huge strength transfer from this exercise to all others. So that is my list of my 10 favorite strength-based compound movements. Any one of these, if you put in your program, you are going to experience gains pretty rapidly as you get comfortable with them just by virtue of practicing the movement. You're going to see those numbers go up, and you can be sure that as those numbers increase steadily, so is everything else. These are fun movements, these are great challenges, and they're super easy to put into your program. None of these movements require any special wizardry, just some effort and the willingness to be very uncomfortable. So leave your questions and comments in the comment box. Have you had experience with these before? Are you going to try any of these out? What do you think? Or better yet, you guys can take it over to my Patreon. That's where I upload my training weekly. I do weekly threads where I do form checks, answer questions. Guys, I give life advice. If you want to get in contact with me, that is the easiest way to do it. So go ahead and take your questions and comments over there. And as always, I appreciate the support. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.